Good morning. I would like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Carrie Linklater, and I am your chairperson today, and I am joined via Zoom by the other panel members, Mr. Ian Mann and Mr. Robert Palenke. From the assessment department is Mr. Justin Mikulak, and our administrative personnel this morning are Ms. Belen Rojo and Ms. Louise Boyley. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decision. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. This morning, we will be hearing items 1 through 10 on the docket. And Ms. Boyley, if you could please confirm the assessor and the applicant. Thank you.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Justin Mikulak.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Howard Lindsay McCubbin.
Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give to this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
So good morning, Mr.
Before we get started, is it possible to turn the volume up on the mic in the boardroom there? It's coming in very muted on my end.
Okay, so you're having a hard time hearing me. Is that better?
No, it sounds like you're really far away.
Okay. Okay, how does this sound?
That's a little bit better. We could just go with that for now and then see how it goes.
All right. Okay, how does this sound?
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thanks.
All right. Terrific. Thank you. Okay, we are going to start off with our first property at 279. Down, thank you. 279 Sherbrooke Street.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we have file number 221473, roll number 12090577000, roll year 2023, assessed value 2,116,000. Classification 20, liability is T, taxable. So just for the description of the property here, page 1, we have a 4-story built in 2009. 24 suites. And if we go to page 2, you could see where it's located. It's kind of in that triangle that surrounds Broadway and Portage there on Sherbrooke. Now, if we go to page 3, we have our income value summary, which just shows you the suite breakdown here that we have. So we have a 13 one-bedroom, 7 two-bed, 4 3-beds. Our average monthly rent per unit that we have on this property is $834.22. And you could see the workup that we have used to come up with the value. So our gross potential rent being $240,255, expenses 131,005 or 56.33%, and then our net operating income we have being 101,562 and a capitalization rate of 4.8%. Now scrolling to page 4, I have provided, there is some rent comparables I've provided just to show how it compares to other properties in the market. Now the comparables are obviously older because this area wouldn't really have many newer builds that would kind of reflect the state of this property. Now you could see though the rents are still below similar type properties that are older. And further to that, on page, the bottom of page 4 has the chart where we've just compared based on the zone of CMHC that it falls into. The weighted average per unit rent would be $941.58 from a market rent perspective in this zone. And if you go to page 5, we've provided just the chart that would show where the modeled rent comes in at $240,255. Where we are below market because this is a nonprofit entity. Now we're 88.6% of market. Now I would gather though that because this is a little bit of a newer build, it would most likely be able to command above market rent if this was being run on a for-profit basis, just being that it is built in 2009 and slightly more modern. And then we'll touch on page 6 and 7 here, just regarding our cap rates. You can see that on page 6 where the multifamily falls, the department's cap rates between the 20th to 80th percentile for multifamily run between 4.8 to 5.6%. And you could see where it compares against the other industry leaders, I guess you could say, for multifamily. And then it just has a note here above that just says the 20th and 80th percentiles show the range of capitalization rates used by the Assessment and Taxation Department for 60% of the parcels within that specific property type. So just in a lot of cases, properties will fall between the 20th and 80th percentiles. So you would think of that as a bell curve distribution where you would have the meat of the bell curve fall in that range. And then on page 7, it's just to help substantiate the range of our model. These aren't meant, to be used specific to the property at hand. It's more to validate that the model is say valid on where our cap rates would be falling in. And so if you scroll to page 9 and 10, I just provided on page 9 just a little excerpt here of what the property is. So you could see it's a co-op and is a not-for-profit located in the West End, built in 2009, offers a central courtyard, communal garden, external balconies, and select suites, and is sustainably built. So, and it consists of 1, 2, 3 bedrooms with all utilities included and on-site laundry. So for these type of properties, the way our department approaches it is we typically will value these below average type of income quality. So when I had touched on previously where we're coming in below CMHC market rent, but we don't use expenses on these properties because they're not run as a typical for-profit expenses, where you'll see that all utilities will be included. So it would inflate the amount of expenses relative to if somebody were to be running a property like this on a for-profit basis. So we look at that because we already have a below average income potential on it with the higher expenses naturally that would come in with that. Which is why you wouldn't see us doing any balancing of say site specific regarding these, because they're not run like your typical for-profit. So that's where we stand on this one, and it would be applicable going forward to all the other nonprofits and subsidized housings that would be on our docket today. So outside of that, I think that would conclude my presentation and would be open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. With respect to, Mr. McCulloch, with respect to page 7 of your brief, in regards to the capitalization rate evidence, you said, I believe you said that this range validates the model-driven capitalization rate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, those are all questions I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Belenki, did you have any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, any questions?
I do, just for some clarification, Mr. Mickle. You indicated that in the valuation, you're typically valued below average income quality. So that is going to affect the net operating income. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that will reduce the net operating income. Is there a corresponding decrease, or is there a corresponding increase or a corresponding adjustment with respect to the cap rate, or is all that taken into account by an adjustment of the net operating income?
Well, the way that it would work is it would like to come up with the total market value that the model feels is reflective of the area. It's kind of like the situation where if you're going really low and already taking away risk by showing that the property is a lower income property, so there's less risk to be had in terms of a higher income, it will naturally pull the cap rate a little bit lower because it has to still meet a total market value. So by the de facto equation of what cap rate is and how market value is calculated that way, it can pull the cap rate down because we already are coming in at a lower net operating income, because it's like you can't double count it, where we're already factoring in the risk by going higher expenses and lower income. So to also put in higher risk in the cap rate, it would almost bring it way too low in terms of where I would stand on that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's my only question.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mikulik, just one question, just to verify everything on your page 3 is all model driven, correct?
Correct.
And on your cap rate, I'm just going down. Page 7.
Yeah.
For your cap rate evidence, the 6 properties you have listed, none of those are not for profit, correct?
They are not.
Thank you. That is all my questions. Mr. McCubbin, if you would like to give us your brief, please.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. If I can get you to turn your attention to page 1 of my brief, please. The property owner is Greenmark Non-Profit Housing Block Limited. The property is located at 279 Sherwood Street. The property was constructed in 2009, 4 stories high, and following suite mix, 13 one-bedrooms, 7 two-bedrooms, and 4 three-bedrooms. We are asking for a reduction in the assessed value of the property for the 2023 roll. That reduction is $1,935,000 in total. Madam Chair, this is specifically a capitalization rate issue for this property. So, with respect to brevity or to be brief with my presentation on this specific property, I'll head straight to that. We have on page 13 of my brief, you can see a table with respect to the capitalization rates of these types of properties. Now, a question is asked from the board member in regards to the capitalization rate, how the city viewed it in a sense for these types of properties. I can tell you that we differ in studies and in conclusion with respect to capitalization rates. So I think it should be noted that we do differ and we do have information to back it up. We've provided substantial information in our capitalization rate study for apartments, and these are all market capitalization rate studies, not for profit buildings. And if you look at the table provided on page 13, Madam Chair, you'll see this property falls, and I believe it should be highlighted on your report, 1999 plus, effective year built, all properties, and our conclusion is the capitalization rate should be 5.25%. So it differs significantly from the city. And I just want to make note of that because that was asked by this panel member in regards to the idea of how the assessment department arrived at their conclusion. Now, our capitalization rate, Madam Chair, is supported by, on page 14, you can see from market reports, Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman. I'm not going to read them out. They're in front of you there, and you can see the bands with respect to Q1. It falls right within our range of our studies. I would also like to say, from an investment perspective, this property would have a negative factor. The majority of suites are one bedrooms. There are 2 appliances involved here. And also the Winnipeg multifamily inventories appears to have been saturated with new supply as of the reference date, accelerating the obsolescence of Winnipeg's older multifamily stock. That comment doesn't specifically apply to this property because it's a fairly new property. Nevertheless, we feel no premium for negative factors, including age. So we did not place a premium on this property. We're asking for a capitalization rate of 5.25%, Madam Chair. And we're asking that the value be reduced. Let me back up here. We do agree with the city's evidence with respect to the net operating income. And using net operating income of $101,562 and applying the capitalization rate of 5.25%, we arrive at a value of $1,935,000 rounded. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Nicolette, did you have any questions?
Yeah, just on page 13, regarding the capitalization rate. So would the expense ratios and the income levels used to calculate those cap rates of 5.25%, they would be more indicative of market expenses and income. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay, that is all my questions.
Mr. Galanky, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Mann, any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Kevin, I just have one quick question. Did you have a chance to inspect this property?
No, I did not, Madam Chair.
Okay, so you cannot speak to the condition?
No, we can't speak to the condition of it, but it appears in normal condition. Well, it's age.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nicolette, I'm just going to redirect to you. Did you have a chance to inspect this property at all?
No, I did not.
Did you inspect any of the properties on the docket this morning?
I did not.
Thank you. Because this is a recent build, relatively 2009, do you have any notes on an inspection?
I don't have them on hand. I mean, I could probably dig it up, but I don't know if that is something you'd have to give me time if you really wanted me to look for that, but I don't have it on hand.
All right, that's fine. I thank you.
Okay.
Do either of you have a wish for a summation on this property?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Rebuttal evidence I would like to present on the city's capitalization rate, and I will be very brief and hopefully carries through for the remainder of the document.
Right.
So.
You'd like to proceed with that?
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just going to look for it. Do we have it, Ellen? I don't. Oh, thank you.
Is this the cap rate study?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the rebuttal to the assessor's cap rate studies. And I also provided rebuttal capitalization rate for affordable housing. Something that I've inserted also in my rebuttal. And to that added municipal board decision order A02-330.
Mr. McCubbin, are you referring to the assessor apartment cap rate?
That is correct, and I will also be referring to a document with the heading of capitalization rates for affordable housing. I'm not sure if you have that.
No, we've got the cap rate study. I've got the rebuttal, but Mr. McCubbin is also referring to another document.
If I may approach you and I'll show you the document. Yeah, they were both emailed.
Okay.
Yes.
I have it from yesterday, but I don't have it in my queue today, I'm afraid.
Is, excuse me, is that the 160 page document that covers both the cap rate studies that you're referring to, Mr. McCubbin?
No, it is not, Madam Chair. I'm referring to the rebuttal. It's the title is rebuttal. It should be in red to assessor apartment cap rates. And I will also, sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Why don't we start with rebuttal just for time's sake?
Okay.
You can
Fair
present
enough.
that and the secretaries will work on the other document.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'm referring now to the rebuttal to the assessor's apartment cap rates. If I can turn your attention to page 1, with respect to the assessor comparable, which is located on page 7, the first property in the capitalization rate evidence, 2390 McPhillips. The property was bought with below market rent. Purchaser adds after purchase indicate rents increased from $245 to $395 over pro forma rents. Altus has redone cap rates by using CMHC rents and CMHC vacancy for apartments built after 2005. The CMHC rents are higher than pro forma by $104 for one bedroom and $184 for two bedrooms. This is much less than the present rents and indicates a higher cap rate at 5.59 with CMHC rents. I'll let you go through the definition of values that is applicable to this specific property, but you can see the calculation, Madam Chair, on page 2 and the way it's done, and our conclusion at a 5.59 cap rate versus the city's 4.79 cap rate. In regards to page 3 of that rebuttal evidence, Madam Chair, the assessor comparable 700 St. Mary's, their conclusion is a 3.6% cap rate. It should, however, be noted that the property was bought with intention to renovate as per enclosed letter. And that letter is located on page 13. And I think it's important that I read that letter word for word. It was directed towards Mr. DuPont in our office, addressed, to Mr. DuPont, and says, Dear Henry, as per our conversation regarding the Lady Deborah Apartments, 700 St. Mary's Road, D7 Property Management started managing this property in April of 2020. The new purchaser is a young man just starting out and has no previous experience in owning multi-tenant unit properties. He purchased 700 St. Mary's Road with the intention of renovating, as the building was in rough shape and the previous owner has done nothing for repairs in quite a while. He has done some renovations to the common areas of the building, such as repainting the walls, repainting the halls, and replacing the carpeting. He has plans to do more, but COVID and funds have prevented him from proceeding any further. So I think that should be brought into light with respect to the sale of that property. And he's in the throes of renovating it. It was in fairly rough shape at the time of purchase, as this letter states. And I have no reason to disbelieve this. The assessor comparable on 32 Arden, which is the last comparable on page 7, Madam Chair. As per advertising after purchase, the property was renovated, indicating intention when purchasing. There is laundry income missing for 2018 versus existing laundry income for 2016 and 2017, indicating incomplete revenue data. Enclosed are 2016 and 17 INE, and it's in part of the document here. in this regard. Vendor advised verbally that the manager, Sussex, did not report laundry because the vendor's sister would collect laundry revenue directly without going through the manager. And I'd like you to also refer to the closed municipal board decision, Order A-18-431, stating that it was improper to use cap rates when purchaser intended to renovate a property. And this goes for the property also with 700 St. Mary's that I just spoke of. That, Madam Chair, can be found, that decision, you can see, starts on page 25 of my rebuttal evidence. Decision date was October the 29th, 2018. I don't think I need to go further into that, but I'm open to questions with respect to that part of the rebuttal evidence. I'm not sure if you have this portion of my rebuttal evidence, Madam Chair.
Okay, at the bottom. Panel members, do you have this document?
I do not see it on my.
I'm working off the document I had as from yesterday's submissions. Unless there's been alterations to it in the intervening time, I'm okay with that, but it's limiting.
Mr. Belinkie, if you want to have a look, it says rebuttal with the date of January 12th, 2023.
I don't see any rebuttal document, or all I have is the applicant camp rate study for apartments, 60 pages. Other than the applicant's presentation, that is all I have from.
Mr. Belinkie, can you refresh your page?
Okay. I see. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do now have the rebuttal.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. McCubbin, if you'd like to speak to the second document.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. The second document is titled Capitalization Rates for Affordable Housing. The subject property is social housing, basic finishes, and without landlord or air conditioning, and it's a low-income tenancy situation. And I, again, will quote the Municipal Board Order A-02-330, quotes an excerpt from the Appraisal Journal, January 1996, which states, low investment grade apartments warrant a higher yield and overall rate than conventional apartment properties. The applicable rates tend to rise with the presence of each of the four characteristics attributable to these properties. That is low cost or low quality construction, advanced age, declining or blighted neighborhood, and low income tenancy. So we look at all of those factors when we're applying an appropriate capitalization rate. One justification for the high applicable rates is the added risk caused by several factors. These include a high operating expense ratio and a low net income stream, would increase the variability of the income stream because changes in gross income or expenses has a greater relative impact on net income when the rent levels are low. I I will not continue to read the entire document, but I would ask that you look at this document, Madam Chair, in looking at the valuation of these types of properties. Again, referencing the board order, it's highlighted on the pages that are relevant to this argument. On page 5, you will see the highlights. The agent refers to the subject property as a low-grade residential investment originally constructed as budget housing. And continuing on page 8, you will see the highlighted areas that are applicable to this argument. Board Order A03-073 also speaks to the capitalization rate with respect to similar properties. And in this case, it is a Manitoba Housing and Renewal Corporation property that we were looking at that point in time. And the board's decision can be found on page 8 of that decision. And that is my presentation, and hopefully it carries through for the entire docket, Madam Chair.
Mr. McCubbin, I'll just point out that this is a municipal board decision.
Yes.
So we are at the Board of Revision. So
yes, it's just provided for information purposes as a guideline, Madam Chair. I know it's not a situation where you would it's not a true case law situation where you would be bound by it, but it does set the argument with respect to higher capitalization rates for these types of property. Thank you.
Mr. Nicolette, did you have any questions regarding this rebuttal?
Sorry, it sounds really low. Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry. Do you have any questions regarding the rebuttal information to Mr. McCubbin?
So can we go back to the first rebuttal with 2390 McPhillips?
Okay.
So the adjustment to CMHC rents, is that information something that was provided to you by the owner of when they purchased the property?
No, that was provided by CMHC. That was our information that we have used to arrive at that particular conclusion. That's published information.
Okay. The owner didn't confide to you, though, that they purchased the property with that intention?
Sorry, with what intention?
The intention of raising the rents to CMHC levels.
No, but
they didn't purchase the property with the actual income in place.
No, they didn't report to that, but you can see after the rents were increased from 245 to 395 over the performer rents. That is our argument.
Okay. Now, just in respect to capitalization rate, though, when purchasing a property, it is using the income of the previous year against the purchase price. That would be the definition of calculating direct capitalization. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
And then
we're just to be clear, we're just adjusting it to a market rent in a sense, Madam Chair.
And then just in regards to the rebuttal for capitalization rates of affordable housing, what we tend to see is these properties receive large subsidies from I guess you could say government corporations or government run crown corporations. Would that be factored in when calculating the income for these properties?
That would be, I assume if that's the case, it would be taken in an individual case by case basis, depending on any grants that may be attributable to that property, or any funds going to the owner of that specific property from a government entity. But I'm merely showing in this conclusion that I've stated social housing, basic finishes, and without landlord, air conditioning generally, and low income tenancy, and also there are risks involved with I guess with owning a property like this that should be considered. Location is key when you're looking at ownership of a specific income producing property. These are all factors that should be taken into consideration. The quality of the quality of construction, for example, which may, in the long run, an investor would look at how much R&M they would have to spend on a specific property if it is a low quality construction. A number of issues, blighted neighborhood, for example, demographics in an area. That's merely what I'm trying to portray in this part of my rebuttal evidence.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Belenky, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mann?
I just have a couple of questions. First of all, Mr. McCubbin, with respect to your first rebuttal document, that being the capitalization rate challenges, I guess, to the city's capitalization rate, you discussed 2390 McPhillips and the rents. 700 St. Mary's, you're basing your recalculation of the capitalization rate on a letter, or the usage of that capitalization rate on a letter to Mr. DuPont of your office. Is that fair to say?
Yes, we received the letter, Madam Chair. Just let me go to that specific page to the. Yes, the rebuttal evidence with respect to that is located on page 13 of the rebuttal evidence, Madam Chair, and it is in fact a letter to Mr. DuPont of our offices.
Right.
It explicitly says. And this is from D7 Management, and it's published here. And it specifically speaks to that property and the acquisition of that property and the state of affairs of the property.
Did anyone speak to the purchaser about his intention, or is this just a letter from the management to Mr. DuPont?
We felt that it was important to speak to the property management. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that answer, Madam Chair. I'm not sure whether someone from the office spoke to the purchaser directly, but we did indeed speak to D7 Management, and this is the information that they have provided to us, and it's a record of public knowledge.
How so? How is that a record of public knowledge?
It's being produced there, and it's produced there in the past, Madam Chair.
Okay.
It's out there, and if someone wants to refute it, they can come forward.
Now
It's a record of.
On your second rebuttal with respect to the cap rates for affordable housing, it talks about and you discussed the 4 areas in which might demand a higher cap rate. To paraphrase, low cost construction. Was this? Are you aware of whether this property had low cost construction?
This is in general, I'm speaking in general terms. I'm not aware of this specific property, Madam Chair. This is a relatively new property, and I suspect this property in that instance may not warrant that comment, but the demographics certainly warrant this comment with respect to this property and the income potential for a potential purchaser. Certainly, this is just a general overview of this type of housing, Madam Chair, and it will be applied throughout the docket.
Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions regarding the rebuttal. So do either of you have a wish for a summation on this property?
I think I'm good, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Mikola?
I'm okay, thank you.
Right. Then we will move on to 970 Sherbrooke Street. And the floor is yours, Mr. Mikola.
Okay, so we have file number 22-2006, roll number 130-822-52700. Roll year 2023, assessed value 4,298,000, classification 20, liability T. This is going to be another nonprofit subsidized housing property, being that it's Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation. So just to get ahead of that for right now, it's a 5-story. Actual year built 1988, 38 suites. Now going to page 2, you could see the location, 970 Sherbrooke, being on the corner of Logan and Sherbrooke in the West Alexander neighborhood. If you want to now see the income workup on page 3, where we derive the value. So we have an average monthly rent per unit on this property at $988.51, and then you can see the workup that is model driven, being that the gross potential rent $457.61, expenses $206,387 to come up with the net operating income of $229,950, and then a capitalization rate of 5.35%. And then just I provided rental comparables again on page 4 to show where this property would fall in line with respect to other types of properties of its size. You could see this unit has the 22 2-bedroom and 16 3-bedroom and no 1-bedroom units, and yet the rents are still in line with properties that would consist of some bachelors and 1-bedroom units primarily. So from that regard, again, it furthers just our support that we are well below income on the property. Now on the bottom of page 4, the workup with the CMHC zone 2 relative to market. So you could see the weighted average per unit rent for zone 2 would be $1,291 for a property of this suite mix. And then you could see where our model comes in on page 5. We are 24% below market on the model potential rent on this one. And then just to note for the 3-bedroom value for Zone 2, because CMHC data would be poor for 3-bedroom, I just defaulted to using the 2-bedroom rate for the 3 bedrooms, which is why you would see that they both have the $12.91 monthly rent attached on. And then if you want to scroll a little bit further, we had touched on the cap rate discussion. I don't think I need to explain that. Just on page 9, again, it's subsidized housing. So I just want to keep reiterating the angle that the assessment department would approach these properties is we would have a below market income, but we can't use their expenses to stabilize because they're not run like a typical apartment. So we do acknowledge the income is way below market. And then when we go approach the expenses are going to be slightly higher than market. And so for that, we would be able to use that to calculate our value. Now, I just want to point out, you can see here on the income, though, the types of subsidies that a property like Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation would be receiving on page 9. So in year ending March 31st, 2021, they received $295,581 from Manitoba Housing Renewal Corporation. And then the year before that, $291,337. So the income, like we can't approach this using actuals in place because it wouldn't really be fair. So we try to approach it more from a for-profit angle with below market rents, and just say like, hey, we're showing this property, we're already giving a discount here because we are below what a typical market for-profit would fetch for this type of building. So that would conclude my presentation for today.
Thank you. Mr. McCullum, did you have questions?
No, Madam Chair. I think the assessor explained it well and explained the questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wilkie?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Mann?
Just for clarification, Mr. Michalak, I'm looking at page 9, the revenues, the MHRC mortgage and tax subsidy. That amount, the $295,000, is not factored into the net operating income. Is that correct?
No, and so that's why I wanted to just kind of show like why we can't use these type of properties to run a full income stabilization like you may have seen previously on properties that we see for profit, right? So our net operating income that we have for our model wouldn't factor in something like that. What it does is, because we've already downgraded the income quality on the property, we already show that the characteristics in our income value summary on page 3 would be reflective of taking into the nature these subsidized properties.
Okay, I think I've got that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Mr. McCubbin, if you'd like to give us your brief.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Turn your attention to page 1 of my brief. Again, this property is owned by Winnipeg Housing and Rehabilitation Corporation. The actual address is 970 Sherbrooke Street. The building age is 1988. It's a 5-story structure with a suite mix of 22 2-bedrooms and 16 3-bedrooms. We're dealing with a reference date of April 1st, 2021, and our requested assessment, Madam Chair, is $3,568,000. if you look at the bottom of that page, you will see the edifice of the building. And so on the following page, on page 2, again, the front of the building. And this is actually Logan Avenue looking west. The subject is on the left. It's in an older industrial area. An older industrial is in front of the subject property, industrial building. On page 3, you can see the location again, Logan Avenue looking east. The subject is in the top right, the third property there, the first property on the right-hand side of the photograph there. And it's older housing stock in that area. And then this is Alexander Avenue looking west. The subject is on the right. Older houses behind the subject property. So the area is definitely key in regards to this property when coming up with a capitalization rate for the property. I will do a quick description of the property here on page 9. It is a 5-story improvement built in 1988. And the land area is 34,047 square feet, and it's zoned for multiple tenancy. There are a total of 38 units in this property. You can see the relative location on the overhead below. And on page 10, you can see the services with respect to this property in the general vicinity that are available to the tenants. If I can turn your attention to page 15 of my presentation, Madam Chair. We're using stabilized 2020 rent, which after deductions and vacancy, the effective gross rent is $445,331. The city is using a $436,337. We've applied a rate of 3.2% in terms of the vacancy. The expense ratio, we differ significantly from the cities. We're stabilizing the expenses at 55.9%, and the expense ratio applied by the city is 47.3%. Now, our stabilization has to do with the site-specific valuation of this property, Madam Chair, and we do feel that the income that we have, the potential income, the stabilized income, is at market for this property at $445,431. We differ significantly. I'm now reading from page 8 of my brief. We do differ significantly, and the cost, the significance essentially is in the R&M for this property. We've stabilized that amount at around $62,297 over stabilization period. We arrived at at an expense ratio of 55.9% and a net operating income of $196,239. We are applying a capitalization rate on this property of 5.5%, bumping it up 25 basis points from our capitalization rate table because of the type of property that it is. If you can look at page 16 of my brief, you will see that the chart in regards to Altus 2023 good location properties and the effective year built of those properties. Our conclusion is 5.25 is appropriate based on our studies. This property is budget housing in a less desirable neighborhood. and we've based a premium of 25 basis points on the capitalization rate. The value of the property that we conclude should be $3,568,000, and we're asking the board to reduce the value to that amount. In the appendix, you will see the stabilization of the property expenses itself on page 11. And further into the document, starting on page 14, I hope our pages concur. I've had problems with that before. We have the income and expense statement for the property itself. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolette, did you have any questions?
Yeah, just so on the income stabilization, mine shows page 8, I guess.
Oh,
on the docket I've received, like the page numbers seem to be a little mixed up. Maybe it's supposed to be page 18 and it's missing a.
Yeah, and I apologize for that, Madam Chair. The numbering, I have to watch the numbering of my pages. What has happened? Yeah, no, we'll get to that. But what has happened, I must explain, is what happened is I printed the document out in a format as it was in Word before I actually saved it as a PDF. So it changed the page numbering. But it's I know the table you were referring to, Dave. It's on page 11 of mine, but it shows heading repair and maintenance, 970 Sherbrooke. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, just the whole breakdown that you have regarding, like, I just have some questions.
Sure.
So you took CMHC adjusted rents and mixed it with site-specific expenses?
That is correct. We try to mimic market as much as possible for this type of property. Given the location of the property, etc., but we do tend to actually have to regard the expenses incurred on a property like this. So yes, to answer your question, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Would you agree that these nonprofit properties, though, and or subsidized housing, they would typically include all utilities paid in their expenses, so that would naturally inflate their expenses to a degree? Is that correct?
Typically, yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so you do you think you would factor in the subsidy that they've received? If you're going to use actual site-specific expenses, should you be using the subsidies that they also receive?
With respect to the property that we're dealing with here, it depends on how that subsidy, if it's close to market or not, if comparing to market.
Okay. Okay, those are all my
questions. Does that answer your question?
No, like I'm just trying to clarify the mixing and matching of, if you're going to use site-specific expenses, should we be also factoring in then site-specific income that they're receiving, and not mixing like a market to a site-specific expense? That's kind of my clarification, I guess, on the question.
Yes. These properties are certainly different, and we have to come to some sort of conclusion on the value as it relates to a market value of the property. So it's not your typical property we're dealing here with. We would like to actually, generally when we do this, we would have typical market information, and we would use the actual expenses. We're trying to trend a sort of a market income, and it may not come up to the actual subsidies that the property does receive, Madam Chair.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Belenky, did you have any questions?
I do not have any questions, thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I just have a couple in regards to, I think you got information that there is no air conditioning in this building.
I believe so, Madam Chair.
Did you inspect the building?
I did not inspect the building. If you look at the, Madam Chair, if you look at page 14 of my presentation, the information that we have ticked off there does not include air conditioning, and that's what we're going on. Yeah.
That is all my questions. Do either of you have a wish for a summation on this property?
I'm okay, thank you.
I'm okay, Madam Chair.
All right. We're just going to take a quick 5-minute break. And I would like to call this meeting back to order. And we are going to move on to 576 McDermott Avenue. And Mr. Michalak, whenever you are ready.
Okay. So we have file number 22-1985. Roll number 130-614-21500. Roll year 2023. Assessed value $1,707,000. Classification 20. Liability T. This again will be another subsidized housing in that it's Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation. So similar property as previous in terms of ownership. So we have a 4-story apartment with the actual year build 1914. We have an effective year built 1941. Number of suites 39. If you go to page 2, you could see the location in the West Alexander neighborhood, just kind of in between. I guess that would be which street? I'm drawing a blank here. It would be near Sherbrooke, but the cross street coming up the other way. I don't know why it's Isabel, between Isabel and Sherbrooke. And if we go to page 3, we could see the suite breakdown. So 35 units, 10 1-bed, 22 bed, 4 3-bed, and it does have 1 4-bedroom in it. The average monthly rent on this one, we're only at $550 per unit. So the income gross potential rent is quite low. We at $231,130, and then expenses being at $123,031, or just under 55%, to get our net operating income of $107,03. And we are using a capitalization rate of 5.9%. This is all the model driven, of course. And then just to compare, you could see on page 4 how below, area rents we are on this one. Just when you compare it to other properties, you could see that we're well below market. And that's even stated further on page 4 and 5, where it's the similar workup based on the zone of CMHC. And you could see on page 5 just highlighted, like we're 57% almost below market. So all really factoring in here the type of property that it is. And then just on page 9, I just supplement again, just the subsidy can at least be highlighted. They are heavily subsidized. You could see $288,202 in 2020 or year ending 2021 from Manitoba Housing and Renewal. And then and then that just circles back to, we're already well below market. and our cap rate's up at 5.9%. I mean, we really feel like this one. I don't know how it can be really much lower, just by the basis that our income is so low. That the final value, I think, is more than reasonable. That would basically conclude the presentation for today.
Mr. McCubbin, any questions?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Mr. McCulloch, if I can turn your attention to page 4 of your brief, please.
Yeah.
So you've used rent comparables here, and asserting that this is way below income for this property, the rent that you're using, the average monthly rent of $550. Now, what would be your best comparison here to this property? Of the 4 comparisons that you've produced?
I would probably say I would place my most weight on the rents for 468 Ross Avenue. I mean, it would probably give us the best in terms of it has like a similar kind of breakdown with the 1-bedroom and the 2-bedroom units being 8 and 14. The rents are $647 a unit, and they're smaller units at that, with the area per square foot being a little bit smaller. Now, I know, just to caution, that also would factor in other building areas. So I don't like to put a lot of weight on that number specifically, because if there is some common areas that would get kind of dispersed through that number. But in terms of when you look at the suite mix breakdown, I'd probably look at 468 Ross. I mean, it's on the lower end.
Right. But you agree that this property was originally constructed in 1914, would you not?
Correct.
And with upgrades, the actual year built is the effective year built is 1941, as promoted by the department.
Correct.
Okay, so that property that you're looking at there is substantially newer. Would you agree in terms of age?
Well, 468 Ross, because that's not an actual. I don't know the actual year build of 468 Ross. It may. And I don't know if you have that information. I mean, it may have an actual year built of much less as well. But I can't substantiate that right now.
Can't substantiate. But if you look at the property below, it's sort of beside it. It seems to that you have 2 ages on 1477 Notre Dame, right? Does that conclude some sort of adjustment to the effective age of that property? It's shown in that row.
Where the effective year built on 1477.
Yeah, 70 to 72.
Yeah, so there could be 2 reasons just with effective year built. Sometimes when the department adds it, just by the way we track our building records, if the property did have a basement suite, or not a basement suite, but just basement overall area, and they were, say, at some point there was effective year built placed on the property, there may be the person entering it may have forgot to also add the effective year built to the basement portion of the building, just by the way we have to enter it in our database. Now, the other thing would be, because it does show it is 2 buildings, potentially 2 buildings may have been constructed in separate years. But I don't have I don't know the actual year built of 1477 Notre Dame, but in terms of an explanation on why that could differ, that might be possible.
Right. And in regards to the capitalization rate, that's a model-driven capitalization rate also?
Correct.
Okay, those are all the questions I have, Madam Chair.
Palenque, did you have any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
Just with respect to the modeled rent that you have used here, I'm comparing that with the amounts on the CMHC rents. Is it safe to say that the modeled rents or the model does not use CMHC rents in its calculation for site-specific rents?
Yeah, like the way these values are derived is through apartment owners submitting their income and expense information to us, and then thus the model's able to derive baselines based on what gets reported, and then we can compare those baselines to what CMHC would like what CMHC values would be. So I really don't have a specific breakdown, although I wish I could provide one about what exactly the model's using to calculate that number. But I do know the number is calculated. The income and the expenses are calculated by using what's submitted to us through owners in their yearly submissions.
But again, going back to what you said earlier, the income and expense, I'm looking at page 9 now of your report.
Yeah.
The income in the calculations would not include the mortgage and tax subsidy from MHRC.
No, and so what I like to do, so the whole purpose when the assessment department is coming into these appeal valuations, typically what we do is we're comparing a mass appraisal model against site-specific valuation. Right. But what I want to highlight with the income statement that I've included is we can't use that type of breakdown of doing a stabilization of full income and expenses because they are run outside the scope of a typical for-profit by getting these type of subsidies that have been included. So we defer to our model, which factors in the below average income quality for these type of properties. Like we try to essentially factor that in per se, right? Because we have to apply a blanket valuation for an entire city. So that's how we would just try to defer to that and say, hey, we're going to factor in that we know you're subsidized housing, you're not run like a typical for-profit, so we're going to go and place a lesser income quality on your property to reflect that, and then in turn also the capitalization rate, you could see 5.9% relative to what kind of area it is and that in the year built. So that's the best explanation I have, and I don't know if that even covered what you're asking, but I'm just trying to provide a layman's term into just how we have to approach these, right? Because we can't just get out to every single one and just do a full appraisal, although we'd love to. It has to be some type of mass appraisal application to it.
Okay, thank you. That was a good explanation for me, and it presupposed a couple of extra questions I had. Thank you.
Okay.
So I just have a question in regards to your cap rate.
Right.
So on your chart, your cap rate for multifamily is 4.8 to 5.6, but you've got 5.90. So it is model driven, correct?
Yeah, so just to touch on further, that 20th to 80th, that's for just the 20th to 80th percentile. So it's basically saying how this property would fall more on the farther end of the spectrum, I guess you could say, outside of the
right. So, and I'm sorry. So the model is taking into consideration what factors? The age or that it's a subsidized housing? Can you speak to that?
Again, I wish I could come in here and give a full long class on the assessment modeling if I could, but unfortunately I don't have all that information, and it wouldn't be right for me to speak to it.
All right, and thank you. Mr. McCubbin, if you would like to give us your brief.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes. Chair, if you can turn your attention to page 1 of my brief, please. The property is owned by Winnipeg Housing and Rehabilitation Corporation. The address is 576 McDermott Avenue, 4 stories high. You can see the structure below, a photograph of the structure below on page 1. We're asking for a reduction in value to $1,117,000 from $1,707,000. Going through my report, anything to report on page? If you can turn your attention to page 7, you can see the relative location of the property. Lydia is the street that it intersects with McDermott. It's right on the corner of Lydia and McDermott Avenue. Again, for this type of property, there's a deficiency in parking, which should be considered also when viewing for investment purposes. And in a typical market, there is a deficiency in parking for this property. I'm not sure about the Sorry, if I can turn your attention to page 13 of my presentation, Madam Chair. You can see the way we came up with the effective gross rent, and it's a stabilized sort of rent, and after discounts and including vacancy, the effective gross rent we arrive at is $232,789. We're using the same vacancy rate as the subject property. We differ substantially in the expenses for this type of property, and I suspect because it's due to the age of the property also, and the actual specific requirements of the property of this age. It is original age of 1914 to the period of 1941. In regards to that, our conclusion for properties in that constructed in that era is anywhere from 6.1% to 6.6% in terms of a cap rate, and we're considering the factors when coming to the conclusion of a capitalization rate of 6.25%. It's an older structure and in a less desirable neighborhood. Page 8 will show the income summary, Madam Chair, of the property. And again, the R&M, you can see is a substantial amount in that income summary of $75,488. Our total expenses are $162,952, with a net operating income of $69,837, capitalized at 6.25% because of the negative factors. What an investor would be, negative factors to be considered from a typical investor. We arrived at a value of $1,117,000. In the appendix, you can see, and this is probably incorrect, but the first page on the appendix, won't reference my page numbers here. First page on the appendix, you will see the actual repair and maintenance schedule and how it's been stabilized. And for this apartment, we're running at R&M per suite at $2,157. Information on page 14 shows some basic information in regards to what was reported. No central air conditioning, washer and dryers in sight, fridge and stove, of course, in every apartment. And services included the rent, heat, and water. And you have the income and expense statements for the years following on the pages of my appendix. And that is my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Nicola, did you have any questions?
I would just ask that because it is the Winnipeg Housing and Renewal Corporation, similar to previous, that my questions regarding the income and expense from the prior property be carried over to this one as well.
All right, thank you.
And I would ask that my answers be carried forward also.
Thank you. Mr. Belenky, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
And I also have no questions. Do either of you have a wish for a summation on this property?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
I'm okay, Madam Chair.
All right. Then we will be moving on to 730 Alexander. And,
Okay. We have file number 22-1900, roll number 130-805-07000, roll year 2023, assessed value 430,000. Classification 20, liability is T taxable. Again, Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation is the owner, so similar type of property, again, nonprofit, subsidized. We have the building description, 2 stories, actual year built 1921, effective year built 1960, 6 suites. And we have the location, similar type of area as prior in the West Alexander neighborhood. You could see that it's on Alexander, which would be just the first street south of Logan Avenue, between William and Logan would be the main arteries that are between it. So this property, again, it's 6 units, smaller scale, 2-bedroom, has 3 2-bedroom, 3 3-bedroom. Our average monthly rent's $695.23. Our gross potential rent on this one comes in at $50,057. Expenses 50.34%, net operating income $24,063. The cap rate of 5.6%, and then the market value to come up with the 430,000. And then you could see the rental comparables I tried to provide with smaller apartments with smaller total number of units. And then it was hard to find other 3 bedrooms for comparison, but the other suites I had provided 3 of them with 2-bedroom counts. And then so you could see where that falls in on the scope here for comparison purposes. Now, when we take it to market and compare relative to market, just using the zone 2, smaller scale, I mean, the yearly rent potential would be 92,952. So that's a percentage of market on our model is 53.85%. And then again, just scrolling to page 9, I mean, I had provided just their revenues to show that they are subsidized, and so our approach would be consistent from the prior properties that were discussed of this nature. So that would conclude my presentation for today.
And I thank you. Mr. McCubbin, any questions?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, a couple of quick questions. Mr. McCubbin, if I can turn your attention to page 4, please. In regards to rent comparables. So 1 through 4, are these subsidized housing properties? Or are they actual investment properties?
They would be investment properties.
So there would be investment properties. So these are your comparisons. And 3 of them fall, 2 of them fall below the actual, what you've arrived at. And one significantly higher. Is that correct? At 980 William?
Correct.
So how does that conclusion concur with percentage of market rent that you've supplied to us on page 5? How does that correlate in terms of only 53% of market rent?
Well, I would say that you're going to have some properties in the area that are going to charge below market rents, and I mean, it's evident, right, when you see what is presented here. And I mean, a for-profit investor would still be looking and saying, okay, like, what is the market potential rent, and what can I get for this type of property? So I mean, hey, you're gonna have properties that are gonna be below market, and I mean, I think I'm just trying to be transparent and reflect that in presenting this. And I would also add that this property does also contain 3-bedroom units, and none of the comparables do have 3-bedroom units. So I would say that there is also a little bit better of an income potential there regarding that they do present, just more bedroom area.
But you would agree that the average monthly rent presented in comparables doesn't correlate with the percentage of market rent as you described at 53.85% for the subject property.
Well, I think it supports it, at least to a degree, of that these rents are below market. I mean,
like the rents are below market that you provided on page 4.
Correct.
Or they're at market.
What's that?
Are they at market, the rents on page 4? You said it wasn't subsidized.
Well, these would be rents that are submitted to us through income and expense mailers from property owners. These would be the actual rents that are reported by those
from
properties.
Non-subsidized housing properties. From non-subsidized housing properties, from investment properties.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Those are all the questions.
Mr. Belenky, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mann?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I also have no questions. Mr. McCubbin, if you'd like to use your presentation.
Thanks, Madam Chair. You can turn to page 1 of my brief. This property gain is a subsidized housing owned by Winnipeg Housing and Rehabilitation Corporation. Location is 730 Alexander Avenue. The subject was constructed in 1921. The city has a varied age, an age variant on it, the effective age built of 1960 due to upgrades, I suspect. It's a 2.5-story structure. The current assessed value is $430,000. We're requesting an assessment of $303,000. Looking at page 7 of my brief, it shows the overhead of the subject property on Alexander Street, where it intersects with Lulu in the general neighborhood, and the services requisite this type of property on page 8 in that mapping. Page 13, Madam Chair, our conclusion is fairly similar to the subject, to the city's conclusion with respect to the effective gross income. We are at $48,480. We've applied a 3.2% vacancy rate on the subject. The expense ratio is significantly different, again, from the cities, and with a property built in this era, the conclusion for a property in our band on the table on page 14 would be around 5.5% for the capitalization rate, Madam Chair. On page 8, you can see the effective gross income that we've arrived at and the expenses. And again, the expenses can be found in the first page of my appendix, the stabilized amount. And it's at 65%. We've applied 10 basis points above our capitalization rate for this specific property, to 5.6%, arriving at a value of $303,000. The supporting documentation with respect to the properties IE can be found in my appendix, and I'm asking the board to reduce the value of this property from $430,000 to $303,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nicolak, any questions?
Okay, so just to clarify, you agree with our capitalization rate for this property?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I thought I had misheard in your presentation.
No. I was just supporting how we got at our capitalization.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
No.
And then regarding the questions for income and expense, on my end would be the same as previous, carried over.
And Madam Chair, the answers would be the same.
Mr. Belenky, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mann?
Nope, not this time, thank you.
Thank you. I also have no questions. Do either of you have a wish for a summation on this property?
No summation, thanks.
No summation on my part, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will move on to 855 Furby Street.
Okay. So we have file number 22-1072, roll number 130-614-85500. Roll year 2023, assessed value 475,000, classification 20, and this is G, grantable, because the owner is Manitoba Housing and Renewal. So this would be, again, a non-profit subsidized social housing. When we look at the property description, so we have a 3-story, 1978 year built, 6 suites. And then page 2, you could see where it's located on Furby again in the West Alexander neighborhood, close to Health Science Center, just in a block off of Sherbrooke. And again, the suite breakdown, this one, again, another smaller one being 6 units, average monthly rent $724.70. You could see where we come up with our income valuation for this being $24,951 on our net operating income and the capitalization rate of 5.25%. Now you could see the rent comparables again. Being that this is a smaller structure, it's not outside, like it's outside the scope of, say, your regular 20 plus unit apartment, but you could see where the rental comps fall in the area, and then how it compares to CMHC market, 56% below market based on the bedroom count for the zone. And then there's no income and expense information, as that, again, isn't really submitted to us through Manitoba Housing because of the type of property that it is. They don't give specific breakdowns per property. So again, it's similar type of valuation though, where the property would be at below average income quality. In terms of how we would approach the valuation here, similar to the ones that have been discussed prior. So the only thing that would change with Manitoba Housing is their liability is grantable instead of taxable. So we still approach it the same way though as the Winnipeg Housing and Renewal from a model standpoint. So other than that, that would conclude my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. McCoven, questions?
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Blanken?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Mann?
None for me, thank you.
I also have no questions. Mr. McCoven, if you'd like to give us your...
Thanks, Madam Chair. For brevity, I will go right to the crux of our argument here, which is with respect to the capitalization rate. The property is located at 855 Furby. It's owned by MHRC, and it's built in 1978. If you can turn to your attention, please, page 14 of my presentation. This is the only item that's on their dispute here, Madam Chair, is the capitalization rate. With respect to our study, our findings for properties that are purchased for profit, the capitalization rate is 5.5%. We're asking for a capitalization rate of 6% in this property, Madam Chair, and it's a wood frame construction, no amenities. Again, with respect to durability and quality of income. It's a social housing, no history of economic profit. And we would ask for a higher capitalization rate on this property. Our conclusion to value is $416,000, and we ask the board to have it reduced to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Luck, any questions?
Just a question. I know you agree with our expenses, but you said that you applied a market expense ratio of 50.6%. That's correct, right?
You're referring
on page 13.
Yeah, that's yes, we did say that. Yes. Okay. Yes. And yeah. We have no yes. We have no income.
Okay.
Our expenses with respect to this property.
Okay. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Balanki?
I have no questions at this time. Thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
Oh, no questions, thanks.
You didn't have a chance to inspect this property at all?
No, Madam Chair, I didn't.
Do either of you have a wish for summation?
I'm okay, thank you.
I'm okay too, Madam Chair.
All right. We'll move on to 484 Toronto Street. Whenever you're ready, Mr. McCulloch.
Let's see. Okay, so we have file number 22-2010, roll number 130-402-62500, roll year 2023, the assessed value 513,000, classification 20, and liability is T, taxable. It is a Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation, so similar to what we've been discussing today. We have a 3-story, actual year build 1917, effective year build 1925, with 12 suites. And if you go to page 2, you could see the location in the West End neighborhood in between Sargent and Ellis on Toronto Street. Now, just bringing you to the income value summary. So it's all 2-bedroom, 12 units, $608.99. We have the average monthly rent, and you could see where that would lead us to the income workup to derive the value of $513,000, which was using the net operating income of $28,964 and a capitalization rate of 5.65%. All model driven, of course. And then our rent comparables, where it compares model rent for this property against actual rents of other properties in the area with, you could see the suite breakdowns here. And then the CMHC report for Zone 3, coming in at a weighted average of 1,006. Coming in where we're coming in at 60.5% of market relative to the CMHC data. And just again, page 9, I had just put their revenue stream just to, show that they are subsidized just for purposes of the property, to confirm that. And other than that, that would be my presentation for today on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Cubbin. Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Regarding page 4 and 5 of your brief, Mr. Michalak, the questions I've asked previously would apply also to this property, and Madam Chair, I'd like to have that on record.
Thank you. Mr. Belenky, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mann?
Just one with respect to the actuals that you got on your page 9. The market rent potential is significantly below what the model is. I see that the tax subsidy is significantly more on a percentage basis than some of the other properties we looked at. How have they are you aware of how the market rent potential is determined by the Winnipeg Housing Rehabilitation Corporation?
No, and that's why we can't really use their reported information for this kind of stuff. Why we just have to kind of defer and say, you know what, we think just based on the type of property that this is and the unit mix, we feel that it falls in below CMHC for the area, which is I've provided the charts for CMHC that show what the average rents are, and then we compare the model against it. Now, I just provide rent comparables as a de facto to say, like, you know, it is still in line or below in some cases of other properties in the area. But you're also going to see there are times where some properties just, that's rents that they want to charge and what they get for the area. And so there's other properties I could dig through that I could get higher rents if I wanted to. But you know, I'm trying to be reasonable in terms of comparison purposes of how we're trying to measure this, and to show that we're not like way outside the scope here of being too high on the value. So
Okay.
So I wouldn't know though where Winnipeg Housing and Renewal, how they set that or how they get subsidized. Like, I don't know what type of makeup there is.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. So, just one question, Mr. Mikulek. This is a effective age building of 1925, correct?
Yeah.
And so it's got a 5.65 cap rate.
That's
So,
correct.
so did you not consider changing the cap rate at all? I mean, it's got an effective age of 100 years old.
You know, for the purpose of Board of Revision, I would defer to our model. And then, but also looking at the overall value, though, we can't just adjust cap rate if we still think that, hey, we've come in well below income. Why should we also adjust the cap rate? Like, because at the end of the day, if we feel that the final number's reasonable, then we kind of just leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Do either of you have a wish for summation on this property?
I'm good, thanks.
Mr. McCubbin?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So if I can get to turn your attention to page 1. It does have an age variant of 1925, Madam Chair, as you pointed out, a substantially older structure. We differ in regards to the net operating income, which is directly related to the expenses, the expense ratio that we've placed on this property. It's 70%. It is a significantly older building. We feel that should be taken into consideration. We've applied a higher capitalization rate based on the age. If you look at our cap rate study again on page 14, I'll have to refer to that. You will see that we're right somewhere in the middle of that band, with properties before 1946, and this property significantly earlier than that. So we're asking the board to actually reduce the property value, applying a 6.4% cap rate to their net operating income of $25,608, and arrive at a value of $400,000 for this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Mikulek?
Just again, the questions about the income and expense from the previous properties carried over.
The answers are essentially the same, sure.
Thank you. Mr. Belenky?
I have no questions, thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
So do I.
And I have no questions. And since I jumped the gun, I'll ask again, do either of you have a wish for summation on the property?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
All right.
I'm okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we will move on to 726 Toronto.
Okay, so we have file number 22-1195. roll number 130-400-18000. Roll year 2023, assessed value 388,000. Classification 20, liability is taxable. This is not so this property is not a nonprofit. This is a for-profit property. So outside of the scope of what we were discussing prior. So we have a 2-story 1959 actual and effective year build being the same, 5 suites. So a smaller property. Now you could see there was a sale here June 26, 2020 for $245,000. We're at $388,000. Now I just want to quickly skim to page 4. So page 4, there is a outstanding permit here for interior and exterior alterations from November of 2021 that hasn't been completed yet, and for a declared construction value of $240,000. And so that would just kind of lead us into, we're at 388,000 just without factoring in that the property's going under renovation right now. The net operating income and the capitalization rate wouldn't be indicative of the current state, as you could see on page 9. Where the owner has said property vacant and is under rehab, and that was as of May of 2021. So can't really do a stabilization, but just with the permit being open, we just feel that it's gonna need an inspection to being brought up to, I guess, a more current standard rate once we see the building. So we'll just have to stay with this one at 388,000 right now. And that would be all for my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. McCubbin?
I don't, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Belenky.
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Mann?
When was the last time this building was occupied?
I don't have that information exactly. I mean, my assumption is maybe prior to the sale it might have been, but I don't have that information on hand.
Suffice to say, it's vacant as of the reference date and had been likely for some time prior to that.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you could. I guess you could say that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I have nothing further.
And I have no questions. Mr. McCubbin, if you'd like to give us your brief.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This property is located at 726 Toronto Street. There is a recent transaction prior to the current value year, as was stated, for $245,000. The property is under renovation, Madam Chair. As we speak, if I can turn your attention to page, again, this is where my page numbering is off on mine. I suspect it would be page 15 of your brief, maybe the income summary. Would that be correct?
Well, mine says 8.
8. Okay, so it's the same as mine. Okay, so if I can turn your attention to the income summary, our conclusion with respect to potential rent is the same. However, we're placing 25% vacancy allowance on this property because of the current circumstances. So we're arriving at, after using a similar expense allowance as the city, we're arriving at a net operating income of $16,685. And we're applying a capitalization rate of 6% at this point in time. In regards to that, You can see properties that in that era, the explanation for properties are around 1946 to 1959 can be found on page 13 at 5.75%. Because the nature of this property, we're applying a higher capitalization rate on it. And we do realize that at some point in time that the value will be reviewed. We're somewhat higher than what the individual, the owner, paid for the property in 2020, and we're asking the board to reduce the value to $278,000 at this point in time, Madam Chair. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Mikulik, any questions?
Yeah, just in respect to like cap rate. So would you agree that properties of this size, of being smaller in nature, would therefore attract more investors because they could be more affordable? There would be greater demand?
Sure, it would be, this is a more competitive market for sure. I would agree with that. But however, it's also would be based on the location. Investors with looking at types of properties like this would look at and not to sort of say anything drastically negative in regards to the area, but yes, it would be attracting more investors.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Palenque?
No questions, thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
Just with respect to the cap rate, I see that you've added 25 basis points for the negative factors, which include the small suites in need of retrofitting. But that retrofitting is being done now, isn't it?
Yes, it's being done as we speak. Correct. Like I stated, Madam Chair, upon conclusion of this property, when it's totally retrofitted and rented up, we would look at the value that the city's placed on it and decide whether that's reasonable again. But in the interim, we're placing a higher capitalization rate based on the condition of the property at the moment.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
So, do you know how long this property has been vacant for?
I do not have that answer. I know it was purchased in a vacant state, Madam Chair, but prior to that, I have no idea.
So it was purchased in a vacant state or
Yes.
state, okay. And you don't know if the owners then rented it out for a period of time and then decided on the rehab?
According to the information that we have, and this is all the information we have from this particular owner, the property was vacant at the time they purchased. So.
Thank you. Do either of you have a wish for summation on this property?
I'm okay.
I'll just say, like, we're okay in terms of like the vacancy. I mean, I get it, it's vacant. It's just all that's gonna change when it gets supplemented anyway, back to the reference date. So the vacancy, like, I get it, it's vacant. If you want to apply, a nominal amount like that, it's understandable. It would just be they're gonna get supped. So that's just my summation.
Right, I thank you. Mr. McCubbin, you didn't wish to add anything?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. We'll move on to 568 Agnes. And I understand, Mr. Mikulik, you have a rec on this property?
Okay, yeah, let me just check it out here. Okay, yeah, I do. Did you want me to just read it in first and then go with the rec, or?
Yes, just read in the roll number and then you can present your recommendation and we'll just see what Mr. McCubbin has to say.
Yeah, So we have file number 221191, roll number 130-412-64000, with the recommendation to reduce the value to $585,000. And then you could see the parameters there on page 1 regarding how it came about.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCubbin. Would you like to accept or proceed?
The recommendation seems very reasonable, Madam Chair, but at this point in time, I have no instructions from the client. So, I would just ask the board to, I will present my brief as evidence. I will highlight, page 1 where we're asking for reduction to 565.
Okay, actually, I'll stop you there. We'll just proceed with the document.
Okay,
That's
fair
fine.
enough.
Mr. Michalek, if you'd like to just proceed.
Okay, so we just have a 3-story 1929 apartment with 11 suites. And then if you want to scroll, I mean, I guess the only thing we're using out of the new income is the capitalization rate, the model driven capitalization rate on this one. Again, I had provided rent comparables. I felt, this property on page 4, that we were outside the, like a little bit high on this one. So I had done a workup on page 8 just to show here how I came up with the value in at least stabilizing the net operating income. You could see the parameters that were used. You could see on the right where we were on the model, where we were on the model expenses, where we were on the model net operating income, and then the total model value, and then how those numbers change based on my stabilization of their income and expenses. I have shown here just pictures on continuing page 8 and 9, just of some interior photos I was able to grab. So nothing, I guess, too fancy in terms of being renovated, but my assumption would be it's at least maintained and in average condition for a building of this age. And then their income and expenses, you could see, just for reference, I provided the 2020 just to show you where at least some of the figures have come from. So that would conclude my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, questions?
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Mann.
Done for me, thank you.
Questions, Mr. McCubbin, if you'd like to proceed with your brief.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd like to correct the first page of my brief, not page 1, but the page at the beginning of my brief. It says 2021. It should actually, in fact, read 2023, Board of Division. Page 1 of my brief, you will see a requested assessment of $565,000, Madam Chair, and the suite mix is shown on page 7 and the relative location of the property in the middle of the block on Agnes Avenue, just south of Sargent. In fact, with looking at page 8 of my presentation, Madam Chair, the conclusion of the city's recommendation in regards to the NOI is now lower than our conclusion with respect to the net operating income. I think that's fairly reasonable. However, we will go with a rate of 6%. Islands that the board reduced to $565,000 based on our net operating income. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mikulak, any questions?
I guess just carried over from previous regarding demand and pool of investors for properties of this type of value is kind of just my only carryover.
My answer would be the same, Madam Chair.
Mr. Balaki, questions?
No questions, thank you.
And Mr. Mann?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Do either of you have a wish for summation?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
I'm okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we will proceed to 510 Maryland.
Second here. Okay. So file number 22-1733. Roll number 130-411-49000. Roll year 2023, assessed value being $1,133,000. The classification on this one is 40 and is liability is S. They are school tax exempt. And then, so number of stories here, just in the property description, 3 stories, built in 1914, 21 suites. If you look at location on Maryland, you could see it's between Ellis and Sargent on page 2. And going forward, the income summary on page 3, you could see the suite breakdown that we provide: 1 bedroom 7, 2 bedroom 6, 3 bedroom 8 for 21 total units. Average monthly rent per unit being $681.35. And again, you could see how we've come up to a value of $1.133 million using a capitalization rate of 5.7%. You on page 4, just using for comparison comparable rents along with the CMHC to validate that, you know, we recognize that this property is a nonprofit entity, as they are school tax exempt, so it would fall outside the scope of your typical for-profit valuation. We're coming in 33% below market on this one in terms of our income in the model. And then also at a 5.7 cap with 61% expenses. I mean, we feel more than reason that we're reasonable here from a value perspective. And then just to provide, I had just provided their income statement to show where they are getting their income from, the rents and the rent subsidy that they receive for the property. So this would be us deferring similar to how Manitoba Housing or the Winnipeg Housing and Renewal Corporation are calculated on a value basis. This would be consistent how we would approach this one. So that would be all for my presentation today.
I thank you, Mr. McCullum.
I have no questions, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Galatian.
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Mann.
None for me, thank you.
I also have no questions. Mr. McCullum, would you like to give us your brief?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd like to point to my revised brief for this property. I'm not sure if you have it or not. It should say revised on the front page. Okay, thanks. That's the brief I'll be dealing with. Essentially, Madam Chair, this is a property that was constructed in 1914, and the city states that the actual effective year still built is 1914. The relative location of the property can be found on page 7, with the surrounding amenities on page 8. So of note, this property has very limited parking also. We agree with the assessor's workup, and the reason being we feel it's reasonable in terms of the rent and the expense ratio for the property. I'm not sure why my ratio says 68.6. Nevertheless, we are in agreement with the net operating income as provided by the city of Winnipeg for this property. We differ on the cap rate, however, and the points that I'd like to make with respect to this property, Madam Chair, if you can turn to page 14 of the brief. This property was built well before 1946, and we're using a 6.6% cap rate. It is budget housing, that's desirable in the neighborhood. 2 appliances, and in consideration of the age and the limited parking status of the subject property, we'd ask that the value be reduced to $978,000 rounded. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Nicola?
Sorry, did you say for questions?
Yes.
Okay, no, sorry, I couldn't hear. No, I'm okay, thank you. No questions.
Mr. Belenky
I have no questions, thank you.
and Mr. Mann.
Just a couple with respect to the age and effective age. Have you been in this apartment complex at all, or this building at all?
No, I haven't, Madam Chair.
And that takes care of the rest of my questions. No more. Thank you.
So Mr. McCubbin, just to follow up from Mr. Mann's question, you spoke to your client, I'm assuming?
With respect to this property, I haven't, Madam Chair. No.
So you can't speak to the condition of the property at all?
No, not at all. No. We feel that it's in, I however feel that it's in normal condition for its age. All we have to go with is what was provided on page 12. My appendix hopefully correlates with your page numbers in terms of the income statements. And yes, I have not contacted this client.
All right, okay, thank you. Do either of you have a wish for summation on this property?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
I'm okay too.
All right. Then we will move on to the last property on our docket, which is 677 Maryland. Whenever you're ready, Mr. McCullough.
Okay, 677 Maryland. So that's file number 22-992 and roll number 130-502-09000. Roll year 2023. Assessed value $2,453,000. Classification is 20T. We have a 3-story apartment, actual year built 1913, effective year built 1972, with 32 suites. There was a sale on page 2 on December 15th, 2020 for $2.4 million. The location on Maryland, it's very similar proximity to the previous property that was discussed on Maryland Avenue or Street. You could see the suite breakdown that we have here. So we have 19 one bedroom, 2 7 bedroom, or sorry, 19 one bedroom, 7 2 bedroom, 32 total units, and the average monthly rent per model $961.91. And then you could see the income value workup that we get here, the net operating income of $134,922, a capitalization rate of 5.5% to come up with our value. You could see the rent comparables that were provided of similar properties here. So you could see where it falls in line with other properties in the area. Now, this one, I will say, on page 6 is used in our capitalization rate evidence. So we did come up with a cap rate of 5.5% and was stabilized to that. So you could see I've provided on page 8 the workup that we used to stabilize it. And so Altus had used a capitalized, they had used this as well in their cap rates. They had come in at 5.66%, as you could see on page 9. Their stabilization, we came in at 5.5%, and the difference being that, so the difference between the stabilization, as you could see on page 8, says Altus used a 4-year average versus the city of Winnipeg being $1,000 per unit for the repair and maintenance. And so we use the 2 most recent R&M figures reported that were highlighted in green, which was the 2018 and 2019 at $35,000 and $31,596. And which would derive our net operating income $132,104, which is coming in very slightly below model. But I mean, in terms of because we're talking about mass appraisal, the difference between $2,400,000 and $2.453 million, it just, I mean, from our end, we see that as a good representation of the model. So from our end, we feel confident in the value that we've come up with. And I mean, you could see how Altus stabilized their value as well, just to come up with the sale stabilization. So outside of that, that is all I have today for my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, questions?
I do not have any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Belenky, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Mann?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. And that would be Mr. McCubbin, would you like to give us your grade?
Thanks, Madam Chair. There is a sale price recorded on this property in late 2020, I believe. December 15th of $2,400,000 to the current owner. In our presentation, if you look at page 8 of our presentation, I hope again concurs with your page numbering. We do conclude very similar for the purposes of this presentation, very similar net operating, exactly the same. We do differ in the capitalization rate, Madam Chair, and to be consistent with our ask for this type of property built in this era, 1913. We're asking for a capitalization rate, Madam Chair, of 6% to be applied to the net operating income. Again, one sale does not make a market. Yes, the property did sell. We're looking at the actual relative market value as of April the 1st, 2021 being in the open market. And we conclude that the value should be around $2,249,000 based on 6% cap rate. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Michalak?
So Altus had previously done the sale and had a capitalization rate of 5.6% on this. So I guess in your opinion, do you think capitalization rates have gone up in the environment that we're in overall, like that it really warrants a 0.4% adjustment?
That's a good question. We do not have the data currently to support that conclusion. I am actually being consistent in my ask for capitalization rates with respect to properties of this era. This property, yes, it was purchased, and we do have the workup with respect to the capitalization rate of this property. We're looking at it as if it was in the open market, willing seller, willing buyer, and considering the sale price also that was reported in December of 2020, and we're asking for a value of $2,250,000. To answer your question with respect to the capitalization rate, I don't have an answer in regards to that.
Okay. I mean, I guess I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Belenky, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mann, questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Michalek, I just actually have a question for you.
Okay.
We'll redirect back to you. There was also a sale, because we're referencing the sale in 2020 of 2.4 million, but then there was the sale in 2014 for 2.6.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, I didn't, just based on what we're dealing with here in the reference period that we're supposed to be with, I just used the current sale price and then the stabilization of the actuals to come out with a capitalization rate and also a net income value, which, I mean, I feel is still reasonable from a mass appraisal standpoint.
No, exactly. But I'm also just wondering if you have anything in your notes regarding that price change. That's all.
Like regarding the sale in 2014?
Yeah.
On why the value went down compared to why the value's up now?
Yes.
Or why it was up and now it went down?
Yes.
No, I don't have that information on what type of sale it was or if we included it for our analysis.
All right. I thank you. On that sale, the sale in 2020 was arm's length.
Yeah, that was validated and like further validation. It has been used in the cap rate evidence for both the appellant or the applicant and the city.
All right. Thank you. Do either of you have a wish for summation on this property?
I don't, Madam Chair.
No, I think we've covered it off here. So.
All right. So all the items have been heard on this docket this morning, and this hearing is adjourned. And I would like to thank you, Mr. Michalek and Mr. McCubbin, for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay.